Welcome to Workshop Wednesday. Today we're going to be talking about melody, as requested. And previously, when we were dealing with harmony, talking about intervals and the vertical arrangement of intervals simultaneously, like when you play a chord, a third, major third, minor third, fourth, stacked on top of each other. With melody, you're dealing with intervals arranged sequentially. In some kind of order. That doesn't mean that they have to be different notes. I mean, Antonio Carlos Jobim managed quite well with one-note samba. Etc. I mean, just one note and then he changes up to another note, but what changes there is the harmony. But what I want to do with this is to go into some real kind of basic concepts regarding intervals and how melodies evolve from those. And we can, go very, very, very simply. I mean, Twinkle, Twinkle is root, jumping up a fifth, then going up a whole step to the sixth, back to the fifth. So C, G, A, F, E, D, C. So there's some scale movement in there. There's also a leap of a fifth. And you go into the classical world, and let's see, Vivaldi. It's all really based around triads, based around just 1, 5 in that case. Basically, just outlining there an E chord. And you go to, let's see, William Tell Overture. Same basic concept going on, going from a B to the E, and then just walking up the scale. Mozart, Eine kleine Nachtmusik. Here's the G chord. And then a D7. Just very triadic, very, very much kind of primary chords. And it wasn't really until the 19th century that melody evolved beyond, Bach gets complex with passing notes. But just everything is basically kind of built around triads and scales to a large extent. So let's see Bach, the Bourrée, which I've played before, where sorry. There you go. Now, what's going on there? He's just got this motif. So it's a small arrangement of notes, 3 notes, another 3 notes, inverting that same shape. So instead of going up, it's going down. And and then it goes up and down, and then it goes back up. So it's within a very narrow range. Again, still using the same motif. Still using that same motif to spin out a melodic phrase. So the basic unit of melody is the interval. Intervals expanded into motifs, and then arranged in phrases. So let's see. So here, see, that's his complete phrase. Let's go back to Twinkle, Twinkle. So there's the phrase, and then I'm repeating, and then back to the first phrase again. So it's the arrangement of intervals into motifs, phrases, and then how those phrases are laid out. And of course, melody doesn't necessarily exist on its own. I mean, there's supporting harmony. I mean, there I'm just doing, as I would playing for my grandkids or when my kids were little. But with Bach, you've got counterpoint. That when the melody goes up, the bass is going down. So, and that's a very common device. So that's just a two-part texture. Now, we talked in harmony, we talked about cadences and how cadences really represent kind of like musical grammar. Like the period is at the end of a sentence or a comma in the middle of a sentence, dividing up phrases. The musical cadence, so here, so we've gone kind of hinting that that's a 5 chord, but Bach gets away without having to be quite so specific here about what the chords are because there's only 2 parts going on. So he doesn't have to fill out all the parts. So he can get away with just having octaves there, for example. But there's a musical cadence right there. Again, let's go back to, let's look at Amazing Grace, which we dealt with in arranging. There's your end of the first phrase, and we've got a 5-1. We've got a cadence there. Even though we're in the key of C, we've ended up on the G chord. But look at that melody. Starts with an ascending 4th, and then goes up to the 3rd above it. So it's just outlining the chord. Now we're moving on, and now there's adding a little bit more information, but it's still basically the same shape as the first strain. But now this time it ends on the 1, so 5-1. So phrases. First phrase ends on the 5 chord, second phrase ends on the 1 chord. So there's a sense of harmonic direction to it. Of course, I mean, there's plenty of musical styles that don't require harmonic direction because, you go into medieval music or certain kinds of folk music where it's not based around kind of the conventional harmony. But for now, I'm sticking with conventional harmony. So structure, becomes an important concept. Where is the melody going? And let's look a few different things. One of the musicals that is really handy for this kind of thing is West Side Story. Because Leonard Bernstein does some really interesting things. And there you've got a classical composer lending himself to a pop musical. So like America, let's see. I knew I should have brought the other guitar out, but it's got this one has the dots. So you've got a C going from a G to a C to an F chord, and then a G chord. So you've got a very basic harmonic structure underneath. But look at the way the melody is just outlining a chord there. And then changing, then it's going to an E flat to a B flat, and then A flat. And a big leap there from the high E to the C. Just as a note, what's interesting is that Anita's part is not the melody, that the chorus girls are singing the main melody, but Anita is singing the harmony below it. It's one of the things you have to look out for when you're dealing with, yes, I know, Bunny, my electric has markers, but I didn't fancy plugging it in today. When you're dealing with a musical and you're dealing with different vocal resources, you often find that sometimes your lead singers can't hit the high notes, so you have to kind of arrange things, for your vocal forces there. But there's an example. But look at, let's say, Tonight, the song, not the time of day, and you've got. Hang on, I've got my post-it note covering the music. There we go. So there, again, it's very common to start a melody with the fourth. There's an E to an A, and then it drops. But again, there's a motif there. There's a two-note motif. Then up to the F sharp. It's still basically outlining chords. Then he throws in a key change. But you'll see, just there's a two-note motif that is spinning out on different degrees of the scale. One of the cool ones is Somewhere, where he starts the melody with an upward minor seventh from a B to an A, and then resolves that. But it's interesting because when he resolves it, you're now on an E chord, so it's like a B7. But instead of landing on the straight E, he makes it an E7, because the next chord is an A and then to an F sharp. And there's this wonderful kind of arc to the melody. But you can feel the shape of the phrases there. That was always a good one in college, because there's so many of the tunes, like Maria, is like it for ear training. It's an augmented fourth, starting on the C, going to the F sharp, then the G. But again, you can hear that it's shaped by these motifs, these little 2 or 3 note shaped phrases that then evolve. Let's look at some Beatle tunes. Actually, while I think of it, talking about tune like with somewhere where it jumps up a minor seventh. One cool one that I did on my tea time on Facebook not so long ago is "Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying," and there the melody actually starts on the major seventh, so the first chord, and then go into a C chord, so a G major 7. So very cool. Again, you can hear there's a motif. And so it evolves from there. Let's see, there's another one that I thought was kind of fun in the way that the motif develops is David Bowie's Life on Mars. He's got this, that's the motif. So it's... And he keeps spinning it out. Now he's moved up a third. Sorry, I got it wrong. That's it. This is cool here. And then he changes key. I can't, sorry, it's too dark to read my own writing here. Then it goes to the chorus where it... So you've been through this kind of gradual... And then you finally resolve onto... And look at that on the F chord. He has the F, but with the B natural and the C sharp. You finally feel like you're getting somewhere here, but as soon as you hit the E chord, he goes to an E minor. You never really know what key you're in with this. But again, you hear how it's a musical motif that just develops, and how much, of course, with songs, how much of that is a function of what the lyric needs versus what's going on purely instrumentally, and what's the story being told? Is it something that kind of sits in a static space, or is it something that needs to evolve, like with Life on Mars, where it starts in one place and then it builds up? Let's see. I think last week we talked about Michelle. See, again, it's just two notes, and then it opens up a bit. melody there. He's just repeating one note, but the harmony is changing underneath it. And that's an important motif there because that's the intro of the song. So, hang on, let me fix my thumbnail before I go any further. So melodies evolving with motifs. Sometimes, like let's say you look at Autumn Leaves. So you've got that. The same motif that just drops down, and the lyric is, autumn leaves falling. So it makes sense that there would be a descending series of motifs there. And then it kind of opens up there. But that progression, the cycle of fifths progression that's based on, D minor 7 to G, C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7 flat 5, E, A minor. So let's look at that, and I'm going to attempt to build a melody on that isn't necessarily reminiscent of Autumn Leaves. So let's see. For one thing, what I could do, because, that goes up. Let me start going down. Yeah, I am in standard tune. One thing that can vary a melody is putting in suspensions. So like, for example, on the D chord, instead of just landing on the D, what if I... See, there's a motif. Same thing, I'm going from, instead of just landing on the C, I'm putting in an F. So... a different kind of suspension. Instead of coming down to the third from the fourth, I came up to it from the second. So I'm on an A minor, and my melody note is going to be a C, but I'm starting on the B. So counterpoint in there, or some kind of echoing phrases. So it's hard to get away from that melody. So let me see, I'm going to use those chords. Just following that, following those chord changes, but just kind of improvising a different melody over it. Okay. Now, of course, rhythm is an important factor in this too, because just starting off with the intervals, but you want to have some kind of rhythmic interest too. And that, a lot of that is also style dependent. I mean, let's say something like this. Scott Joplin, where your ragtime style, kind of late 19th century parlor style, which is, parlor is basically kind of light classical borderline pop from that era. It's not really a derogatory term, it's just the musicological term for it. But basically, he's just got a major chord. Just an A to an E. Or you take something like the Sheikh of Araby, and they're kind of doing it more of a Travis picking style. But how the melody lays out is, the way in which the phrases work, the groove that it sits on, is all kind of style dependent. Christine is asking, building out the melody and adding complexity, am I using counterpoint harmonies and what other tools? Well, I mean, that's pretty much, melody, harmony, counterpoint, rhythm, all of those, texture. And that, again, that's a stylistic aspect of things, because the texture in a ragtime tune. When Harry Got to Heaven, tune of mine. The texture is very different with something like that than, let's say, a bossa nova, where MacArthur Park, stylistically very different. All of Me. I play it in a very, fingerstyle kind of way, but it could be. It could be done, much more as a swing style of things. So, building out an arrangement from melody is, I think, the style is a really crucial part of that. But there's another factor that comes into play from a guitaristic point of view, which is that there are times when in the process that what I'm looking for may be something, and Josh is asking about, exactly this, building a melody, how much do I consider the string voicing in open E and a fingered E are so different? And that's very important to me, compositionally, especially because there's times when I like to look for the ability to use an open string. Let's see here, that's pretty straightforward. But when I do, like here, my melody, I could have played it there, but I want that open string. Same thing there. So the open E is ringing all the way through that, even though my progression is a C7 to a B7 to a B flat 7 to an A7. So using an open string or some guitaristic aspect of things to sometimes to help me spin things out. Let's have another look at Harry, because I seem to recall there being some interesting stuff in it. Now, I heard this in F, so I played it in F, and then my whole goal there was to take it away from F but then get back. So I start F, B flat major 7, A7. Now I'm in D minor. So, of course, now I can't think of it while I'm talking. Hang on, let me start. That's right, I modulate to A and then go to C. But what's interesting there is on the second section, I go, that's the first thing I do is change key to F sharp. And there, I've got that's an open B string ringing against the A sharp on the G string. But then I change key again. Now I'm in G. And I've got the B string now ringing against the C on the G string. So what I've done, and it was purely guitaristic because, and then I just thought it was so cool that I could get the same thing going on in terms of the motif, both using the open string. The open B is the top note of the two. Here it's the bottom note. And that kind of little guitaristic thing is just, okay, well, that's kind of cool. That helps me move the motif along. I can't play it on this guitar, I need 14 frets. But there was a compositional process of hearing something in F and then figuring out how I could write around that. Because in standard tuning, F isn't the most guitaristic of keys. It's actually a lot more fun in DAGGAD than it is in standard tuning. But the string voicing, those things are really important in terms of, and not just in the compositional process, but also in the ranging process. As to, I would rather go, instead of, especially if there's some other texture going on, something along those lines. For me, it's really important to find that nexus of what's guitaristic and what's musical. And then whether it's in an arrangement or in composition, to maximize what can be gained from being in a particular key, in a particular position on the guitar. But a couple of other, and Terence is talking about the Some Girls album songs written in F. But when you're dealing with the Stones, remember, Keith Richards is typically in open G tuning and uses a capo. So it doesn't really matter what key it's in. And rock and roll, traditionally rock and roll was in, the guitar keys. But not always. If it's a piano-driven thing, it could be in could be in flat keys. And of course, jazz, we associate jazz tunes with flat keys because of the horns, because the trumpet is pitched in B flat. So C on a trumpet is B flat for the rest of the band, because it's a transposing instrument. Same thing, an alto saxophone in C is E flat for everybody else. So keys are not that important. There are all kinds of reasons why a composer will choose a particular key. On the Vivaldi, being in the key of E is very friendly to the violin, and of course Vivaldi was a violin virtuoso. So there's a few other things I want to, in talking about melody. One idea is the idea of a floor note, where you have a bottom note to the phrase. This is Windmills of Your Mind, Michel Legrand. So it keeps going back to that floor note, or perhaps the note might be a ceiling note where it doesn't go above that. These are devices that you can use, pointing out, for example, that the idea of melodies progressing in thirds. There's a ladder of thirds where you're climbing up a scale, climbing down the chord, the arpeggio of the chord. Josh, is that called a pedal tone? It's not specifically a piano thing. I mean, a pedal tone is a tone that is just common. It's like with that single melody note is a pedal tone. And one uses pedal tones a lot for variation. For example, if I'm playing something in E, and instead of landing, let's say I've got instead of just landing on the E, I'm going to... Now, those of you that were paying attention when I was talking about the cycle of fifths will notice that instead of landing on the E chord, I'm substituting a B flat 7 flat 5, or an E flat 7 flat 5, depending on where you're standing, because it's the same chord. But I'm thinking of it as B flat, because what I've got is that E is a pedal tone, and then just moving down chromatically, using that pedal, but that's a pedal tone. But it could also be in the bass too. I mean, it doesn't have to be. You can just pedal on anything if it's appropriate to the. There's a pedal in the bass. So let's see, what else did I have in my notes? I think I've covered most of it. Hit me with some questions, because the questions get to be the fun part of doing these. But while I'm waiting for that, let me go back to, I'm going to go back to Autumn Leaves, I think. Because, let me stick with some blues for a minute. The thing about improvisation is that what it really is, it's kind of instant melody. What you're doing is creating a new melody over the chords. So let's say... Hideaway, Freddie Green. So there's your melody. It's a simple motif. And that repeats. And then there's a terminating phrase. And then a little lick at the end. But let's say if I'm going to improvise. I'm just coming up with motifs that I can play around with. But before I get to Josh's question, one little tip that I can give you is that the idea of anticipating what the next chord change is going to be. And that would be a good example of that is Eric Clapton's solo on Crossroads. Because at one point, he gets lost, and he's actually 2 beats ahead of the chord changes, which is some of the most brilliant playing he ever did. Because it takes it into bebop territory. Because you listen to Charlie Parker, for example, and you'll hear him anticipating the next chord change. So let's say, for example, let's give myself a little bit of a groove to play to. To the A there. But I'm trying to get to the A. It's a little difficult without having accompaniment, but I'm getting to the A change a little earlier. Now back to the E. Let's see if I can make that clearer. Okay, here comes the A. See, I got to I was already on the A chord before the downbeat of the A there. You know, it's something to try when you're playing with other people. It's just a little difficult to do on my own when I'm not in the improv, fully in the improv zone. Josh is asking about intervallic melodies. Well, yeah, I mean, a melody can have a big interval leap. I mean, like somewhere. You know, that's a big leap. There's a place. You're leaping from a low note to a high note. But, I mean, you take, for example, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Somewhere. It's a whole octave leap. But that fits the lyric also because it's searching. It's you know, somewhere. It's saying somewhere there, but here. But again, there's a place for us somewhere. Again, a song about looking for a place that has a leap to it, to take you to that. Autumn Leaves with a falling motif. You know, really finding the relationship there between the melody and the lyric. So, and of course, you know, there are tunes that do have, you know, one degree or another of leaps. Certainly, I mean, you know, we talked about Maria earlier on, but that's not a stepwise motion. That's an odd leap because it's doing an augmented fourth. But, you know, more typically, I started playing Alfie there. See, that's in a narrow range. But notice it's not starting on the 1. When it gets to the tonic, it's a leap up. But Alfie, but it's, and there's a question. What's it all about, Alfie? And so it goes on from there. Bunny is asking about triads. Actually, you know, we did triads for the very first one of these workshops. When I was talking about chord solos, was basically about triads. Because triads, I mean, you know, that it's not in and of themselves. I mean, a triad is just an arrangement of 3 notes, but the way in which they lay out on the guitar is what's interesting. Yeah, Daniel's talking about Star Spangled Banner. Now there, it just outlines a G chord. So you've got D, B, G, B, D, G, and then up to the B. One of the reasons that song is so hard to sing is because that's a pretty wide range because it's an octave and a half. So some big leaps. Blackbird, Toby's asking about Blackbird. Doesn't move around really so much. What makes Blackbird really interesting is the accompaniment, which of course comes from the Bach Bourrée. They fit together. Yeah, you know, but when you really, I think the secret, if you want to, and you know, this really came about because I forget who it was requested melody and, you know, being able to spin out melodies. And really, I think that it's really important to study classic songs to get an idea of how melodies evolve. But at the end of the day, almost, you know, anything works as long as you have a context to make it work in. Eric's asking about the way I run the melody through Wooden Horses. How did I come up with that tune? I have no recollection of how I came up with that. I think that was just one of those tunes that I was, you know, just noodling around and came up with some ideas, and then it just kind of evolves. Periodically, I find myself just kind of wrestling with ragtime style tunes. I mean, right now I have a new one, Grandma Grandma Rose's Chicken Pan is the ragtime tune du jour. And, so there's always some kind of guitaristic thing. I mean, here, it's just the fact that I'm running a melody where, because the chord, I'm just trying to keep a moving bass line going on. And how much, and it's true, ragtime is a lot of fun to play. But you also got to be kind of, really, mostly ragtime tunes are quite technically demanding because they move around a lot. So Daniel's asking about what makes a song unforgettable. Ooh, I'd have to really think about that one. I mean, Baker Street, the thing about Baker Street, Jerry Rafferty's Baker Street, is that it's not just the song, it's also the whole production. And that particular era, that period, 1977, there was some really, and that was a time when American radio was very open to kind of orchestrated records. I mean, Baker Street, Year of the Cat is an example also. Those kinds of British productions that have a lot of instrumental sections to them and are just really quite, not necessarily with orchestras, although in Al's case, Year of the Cat, yes, but just with a lot of color and interesting sections, because radio was willing to play a record that was more than 2 minutes and 10 seconds long. At least FM radio was. I worked with Jerry Rafferty just right before he did that record. I worked on an album that he produced for his brother Jimmy Rafferty. I don't know if it's ever still available, but did spend some time in the studio with him. Definitely an interesting character, and a writer of some very memorable songs. I mean, Stuck in the Middle with You, for example, was a big hit also. This Friday, I'm doing my Bandcamp concert. So that's a ticketed concert. Starts at 1:30 Pacific time. And going to, I think, work in a few new things. And I'm still doing, Mondays I'm still doing on Facebook, again at 1:30 Pacific. And actually in the process of going through a year's worth of Facebook Live sessions to pull out an actual almost live album. Well, it is live, it just wasn't an audience, a physical audience. There was a virtual audience, so it's a virtual live album. So that'll be Friday. I'll be doing Bandcamp. And if you're not on Bandcamp, you should join. It doesn't cost anything to join. You can follow me there. Okay. So I think just to finish up, seeing I've spent some time with Autumn Leaves. Let me stay there. But I think I'm going to switch guitars, I think. Let's see. Yes. I'm going to switch. So I have more frets to work with. Hang on. Oh, wrong one. I think this isn't standard. Yeah. This is the Guatemalan rosewood. The Bandcamp stream is available for 24 hours afterwards. So if you can't, you can watch it on replay, but it's 24 hours. Okay. Get a little reverb going here too, I think. Come on, reverb. There you are. Okay. And make sure I've got it up here too. Yes. All right. I have a virtual mixer. I can mix my microphones on screen. There you go. Little improv on autumn leaves. Let's see. Josh is asking if I offer transcriptions for sale. The only ones that, well, there's my original stuff. A lot of my original stuff's out there through Music Gurus, not Music Gurus, onlinesheetmusic.com. I don't sell arrangements of anything that requires a license, unless it goes through my publisher, Hal Leonard. So I've got four folios with Hal Leonard. So I can recommend that stuff. I mean, there's popular songs for acoustic guitar. There's an album of Lennon McCartney. There's a Dadgad one, which has some standards in it too. And there's also my Evolution of Fingerstyle guitar book, which is kind of classical guitar for the steel string player, basically. Bun is asking if I have riffs that I use over and over in improvs like that. I mean, there are always, kind of fallback riffs. If one is feeling particularly just not in the zone. I mean, there's always, always ways around it. But the fact is that, you take, with Autumn Leaves, I'm really, there's scale patterns, there's there's just stuff that kind of falls under the fingers. I mean, some of this is second nature at this point. And the best kind of improvs are the ones where it's not predictable, where it just becomes a, just a free form kind of thing, which is really kind of the transcendent level of it. On my website, by the way, if you go to the music page, imprint page, there's a bunch of links. Music Gurus has some of my instructional video stuff, some of my older instructional videos with Homespun. I have my rhythm guitar class with TrueFire. How much of it is really worked out, Bunny says, it's different every time. I mean, that's the nature of improvisation for me. I mean, there are certain tunes that I do that were improvised and in the course of time have become fixed. I mean, there are sections, for example, in Little Wing that I do the same way every time. Same thing with All of Me, because I've been playing them so long, they've just kind of settled into that. But then, I like to allow myself the room to do stuff that I don't normally do. And that's really where the fun begins, where I can just kind of let go and let my intuition and my instincts go with it. But it's always a good idea, if you've got some fallback stuff. But that's where the chord changes really come into play, because you can always lay on the changes, and just incrementally add. I guess that we do for a class on improv. So maybe that'll be the next workshop. Will be improvisation, and we can throw in a little bit of triad chord soloing stuff in there too. So anyway, thanks for tuning in today. Hopefully you'll come see me on Friday on Bandcamp, and Monday on Facebook for my Moody Monday sessions. If you didn't catch last Monday's, I did a set for my brother Graham for his birthday. And on that note, I am going to sign off. I will see you soon. Cheers.